Eleanor Westwood was the kind of woman no one in Dunbridge ever forgot, and a year after she vanished without a trace, her name would become forever linked to the most chilling serial case the town had never seen coming. In the summer of 1998, Dunbridge was the kind of town where time seemed to move slowly. A single main street ran through the center, lined with small shops, a diner that never closed, and the old brick library that had stood for nearly a century. Life here followed a predictable rhythm. People waved to each other from their porches, children rode bicycles until the streetlights came on, and gossip never traveled far. That calm was shattered on the evening of June 14th, when Eleanor Westwood, a 27-year-old librarian, failed to come home from work. Eleanor was known for her reliability. She walked the same route to and from the library every day, greeted the same people, and closed the building at exactly 8 o'clock p.m. When she didn't arrive home that night, her roommate initially assumed she'd gone to visit her parents without telling anyone. But by morning, concern turned into fear. Calls to Eleanor's friends and family turned up nothing. By midday, the police were notified. Her car was found in the library's small gravel parking lot. The driver's door was unlocked, the keys were still in the ignition, and her handbag sat neatly on the passenger seat. There were no signs of a struggle, no broken glass, no torn clothing, nothing out of place, except for one thing. Resting on the driver's seat was a single white feather, small and perfectly clean. No one could say how it got there. The doors and windows had been closed, and there were no signs of a bird having entered the vehicle. It was a detail that felt too strange to ignore, yet too small to explain. Within hours, volunteers and officers fanned out across Dunbridge, searching every trail, back road, and abandoned property. Helicopters swept the nearby woods, and divers checked the shallow river just outside town. Days passed with no results. The case began to consume the community. Parents kept their children indoors, store owners locked up early, and rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed to have seen a tall man in a dark coat loitering near the library that week. Others spoke of an unfamiliar car parked just down the road, its headlights off, long after closing time. But none of these leads led anywhere. The town's quiet, familiar streets now felt unfamiliar and dangerous. Eleanor Westwood had vanished in the space of a few minutes, leaving behind no answers, only her car, her belongings, and that single, unexplainable white feather. 2 weeks after Eleanor Westwood's disappearance, the case took a disturbing turn. On a cloudy afternoon, a hiker named Mark Fisher was walking a rarely used path in the dense Dunbridge forest. The trail was overgrown and silent, the kind of place even locals avoided. While stepping over a fallen tree, Mark noticed a small mound of leaves that seemed deliberately piled, not the work of wind or animals. Something about it felt unnatural, so he brushed the leaves aside. Beneath them was a small wooden box, no larger than a show box, its surface worn smooth with age. Inside, the contents were chilling. The first item was a silver bracelet engraved with the initials E.W., confirmed later to belong to Eleanor. Next to it lay another white feather, this one different from the pristine one found in her car. This feather was streaked with something brownish red, long dried but unmistakably blood. At the bottom of the box was a photograph. It showed Eleanor at the library's front desk, smiling faintly as if unaware the picture was being taken. The angle suggested it was snapped from a distance, without her knowledge. No one, not her coworkers, not her family, remembered this photo ever being taken. When police reviewed the library's security tapes from the weeks before she vanished, they found something that made the town's unease deepen. In multiple clips, the same man appeared, always wearing a dark coat regardless of the weather. He never stayed long, never checked out any books. He would approach the desk, speak briefly with Eleanor, and then leave. In every instance, once he walked away, a single white feather was left behind on the counter. Eleanor never mentioned the encounters to anyone, and there was no audio to reveal what was said. Detectives scoured the forest for more evidence, but the box was the only thing they found. The lack of footprints or tire marks suggested the container had been placed there carefully, perhaps days earlier, without anyone noticing. The location was remote enough that finding it seemed almost like an accident, unless it was meant to be found. The discovery reignited the search, but it also deepened the mystery. The items in the box felt like a message, though no one could agree on what it meant. Was it a warning, a trophy, or a taunt from someone who was always one step ahead? Whatever the answer, one thing became clear to investigators: Eleanor's disappearance was not random. Someone had planned it, someone who wanted to leave their mark, and the white feathers were their signature. As the investigation widened, detectives began to suspect that Eleanor's case was part of something much larger. They started combing through old missing persons files from surrounding towns and counties, looking for details that might match. What they found was unsettling. Over the past 10 years, 3 other women had vanished under circumstances eerily similar to Eleanor's. All were between the ages of 25 and 30, all disappeared without a trace, and in each case, a single white feather had been discovered among their belongings or at the last place they were seen. The similarities didn't end there. In each of the earlier cases, the victims' personal effects were later discovered far from where they vanished, sometimes weeks later, sometimes months. In one instance, a pair of shoes was found arranged neatly in the middle of a footpath deep in a nature reserve. In another, a locket was left hanging from the branch of a tree in an abandoned orchard, always with the same unsettling addition: a white feather. Forensic testing on the feathers revealed something even stranger. They didn't come from the same species of bird. One came from a swan, another from a pigeon, and another from a hawk. This ruled out the possibility of the feathers being shed naturally in the area where they were found. Instead, it pointed to someone deliberately collecting them from different sources before placing them at the scenes. It was a level of detail that made investigators believe they were dealing with someone meticulous, someone who carefully planned every move. The press began calling the unknown suspect the feather collector, a name that quickly stuck. But while the media speculated, the people of Dunbridge and the neighboring towns grew increasingly uneasy. Locking doors became second nature, and strangers were met with suspicion. The idea that a single person could operate undetected for years, leaving behind such a distinct calling card, chilled everyone. The working theory among detectives was grim. The feather collector was a predator who enjoyed taunting both the victims' families and the police. The placement of the personal items, the variety of the feathers, the deliberate lack of physical evidence, all of it suggested someone who was both organized and confident. Yet, despite the growing profile, there was still no clear suspect, no confirmed sightings, and no idea where Eleanor or the other missing women could be. The pattern was undeniable, but the endgame remained a mystery. A full year had passed since Eleanor Westwood's disappearance when a breakthrough came in the most unexpected way. Late one night, the police department received a call from an anonymous tipster. The voice on the other end was calm but distorted, as though passed through a device to mask it. The caller claimed to know where the nest was and provided precise directions to a location deep in the woods, far from any marked trail. Before the operator could ask questions, the line went dead. At first, investigators debated whether it was worth pursuing. Anonymous tips often led nowhere, and the remoteness of the site made it a logistical challenge. But the word nest stuck with them. It felt deliberate, a link to the feathers found in every case. Within hours, a small team set out at dawn, guided by the coordinates provided. The journey took them miles from town, through thick undergrowth and uneven ground, until they reached a clearing where an old hunting cabin stood. Its roof sagged, the windows were boarded up, and ivy climbed the sides like a slow-moving tide. Inside, the air was stale and heavy with dust. Faint tracks in the grime suggested the place hadn't been abandoned for as long as it appeared. Against the far wall were shelves lined with dozens of small wooden boxes. Each box was labeled with a woman's name and a date. When investigators opened them, they found personal items: earrings, watches, scraps of fabric alongside a white feather. Then they found the box marked with Eleanor's name. Unlike the others, it contained no feather. Instead, there was a single Polaroid photograph. In it, Eleanor was alive, bound to a chair in a dimly lit room, her expression tense but alert. Her eyes stared directly into the lens, as if she knew someone would see it. On the back of the photograph, a single word was written in block capitals: almost. The discovery rattled the entire investigative team. For the first time, there was undeniable proof that at least one of the feather collector's victims had been alive after disappearing. But there was no sign of Eleanor in the cabin, no clues to where she might have been taken next, and no indication of when the photograph was taken. The tip had given them more evidence than they'd ever had before, yet it also deepened the mystery, raising more questions than it answered. Several months after the discovery of the cabin, the feather collector's activities seemed to stop without warning. There were no new disappearances, no new feathers, no strange deliveries. For the first time in years, the investigation reached a standstill. The public assumed that either the killer had been scared off by the police's progress or had moved on to a different hunting ground. But those closest to the case felt uneasy. The sudden silence felt intentional, as if the person behind the crimes was waiting for the right moment to reappear. That moment came on an overcast October morning. The town's librarian, arriving to open the building, noticed a small object sitting on the front steps. It was a wooden box, identical in style and size to the ones found in the cabin. Fearing what it might contain, she immediately called the police. When the box was opened, what they saw left even the most experienced detectives stunned. Inside was a Polaroid photograph of Eleanor Westwood, but this time, she wasn't bound or afraid. She was standing in an open field, bathed in sunlight, wearing casual clothes and smiling. The image looked recent, her hair slightly longer, her face healthy. Next to the photo was a single white feather, perfectly clean and untouched. Theories spread quickly. Some believed this was proof Eleanor had been released, perhaps in exchange for the feather collector stopping his crimes. Others suggested it was a staged photograph, meant to give the illusion of freedom while hiding a darker truth. A few wondered if Eleanor had joined her captor willingly, becoming part of the game. Forensic testing on the photograph revealed no fingerprints, no chemical anomalies, and no signs of digital manipulation. The location in the background couldn't be identified, no buildings, no landmarks, only a stretch of grass and sky. The feather, as always, came from a species not native to the area. After the box was found, the feather collector was never heard from again. The investigation officially went cold, but the story refused to die. Residents of Dunbridge still glance over their shoulders when walking alone, and white feathers, no matter where they fall, carry an unshakable weight. Some say Eleanor is out there, living under a new name, far from the shadow of the person who took her. Others believe the photograph was the killer's final taunt, way of closing the case on their own terms. Either way, the mystery of the feather collector remains unsolved, and the truth lies hidden somewhere between fact and nightmare.